You know that moment when spring bursts forth and the world feels alive again? That's how it was in Maplewood Estates. The sun was shining, casting golden rays on the row of neatly trimmed houses lining our suburban street. Each home seemed to flaunt an array of pastel paint, twinkling flower gardens, and well-manicured lawns. My own yard had become a canvas of creativity, filled with colorful sculptures that I lovingly crafted, my releases of energy and artistry. As I stepped outside, cradling a cup of steaming coffee, the scent of blooming tulips wafted into my nose. I felt energized, the vibrant colors in my garden sparking joy deep within me. My latest creation, a whimsical metal butterfly crafted from old bike parts, was a testament to my passion and dedication. I could already imagine the smiles it would bring to my neighbors' faces. But behind that bright facade, I sensed something ominous simmering. Our community may have looked perfect on the outside, but the pressure of our HOA was like a dark cloud hovering just above. Little did I know, that very cloud was about to rain down on my creativity in ways I never expected. Growing up in Maplewood Estates, my childhood was filled with vibrant memories, most of which revolved around art and creativity. My mother, a devoted art teacher, saw beauty in everything and shared that passion with me. I remember her saying, "Art is the soul's way of expressing what words cannot." She was seldom without paint on her hands and an idea brewing in her mind. After she passed away a few years ago, I inherited the family home. The once happy memories became bittersweet reminders of loss. I wanted to honor her legacy, to continue her creative spirit in our garden, just as she had always done. The afternoon sunlight filtering through branches would be the same light that sparkled on my metal sculptures, each piece a tribute to my childhood and the lessons I learned from my mother. As I set to work, I spent countless weekends in the backyard crafting whimsical sculptures from repurposed materials. One sunny Saturday, I was assembling my latest piece, a giant dragonfly made from old bicycle tires and aluminum cans. The clinking of my tools was accompanied by the delightful sounds of children playing next door. "Hey Lily, what are you making today?" called out Emma, one of my younger neighbors, leaning over the fence with wide, curious eyes. "It's a dragonfly. Can you see its wings?" I smiled, holding up the delicate spiraled structure. "Wow, it looks magical," she exclaimed, beaming with delight. Encouraged by her enthusiasm, I put extra effort into each creation. Along with the dragonfly, my yard began to flourish. Bright metal flowers, cheerful sun sculptures, and even a playful gnome that greeted passers-by with a goofy grin. I poured my heart into each piece, every curve and twist a representation of joy, laughter, and nostalgia. It was during one of these creative bursts that I first crossed paths with Karen. One sunny afternoon, after I had finished the flower sculptures, Karen stood on her porch, clipboard in hand, surveying my yard with hawkish eyes. "Lily," she called out, her voice dripping with that overly sweet tone I had come to dread. "You need to remember that the HOA has guidelines for what constitutes acceptable yard decor. Your pieces might be seen as a little too loud for our neighborhood aesthetic." I couldn't help but laugh. "Karen, it's just art. A bit of color and whimsy adds character. Don't you think it brightens the place up?" Her expression turned rigid, and she placed her hands on her hips. "Character is great, but it shouldn't come at the expense of neighborhood harmony. You wouldn't want to raise property values too high with such additions, would you?" I felt frustration simmering beneath the surface. "It's not about property values, Karen. It's about community spirit." With that, she merely shook her head slowly, eyes narrowing. "Just keep that in mind, Lily. We wouldn't want to have a talk with the HOA, would we?" That single interaction foreshadowed the battle that was to come and marked the beginning of Karen's relentless scrutiny over my artistic expressions. What began as joy slowly morphed into dread and conflict, and I could sense that tension growing. The time for confrontation was looming on the horizon. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. I woke up each morning filled with enthusiasm for my art, only to be met by the looming threat of the HOA. I continued working on my pieces, pouring love and creativity into the sculptures in my yard. However, the feeling of dread began to creep in, especially whenever I spotted Karen strutting down the street with her clipboard. It was as if she was a hungry hawk, circling above my nest, waiting for the moment to strike. One particularly bright Saturday morning, I decided to paint the dragonfly with bright blues and greens, adding colorful accents to truly make it come alive. As I was finishing up, I heard a knock on my door. My heart sank when I saw it was Karen. "Good morning, Lily," she chirped, but I could see the steel in her eyes. "I couldn't help but notice you were working on your yard again." I forced a smile. "Yep, just adding some color." She shifted her weight, scanning the yard as if she were surveying a battlefield. "You realize that the HOA bylaws explicitly state that any decorations must maintain a uniform aesthetic?" I clenched my fists, fighting back the urge to say something snarky. "You mean your idea of uniform? Because I think art can take many forms, Karen." No, dear," she replied patronizingly. "Art should be tasteful and considerate of the whole community. We can't have, how should I say this, too much excitement in our garden. It might frighten the neighborhood." "Frighten?" I echoed incredulously. "Are we running a haunted house? My pieces bring joy, not fear." Ignoring my protest, Karen simply jotted something down on her clipboard. "Well, I just wanted to warn you that I'll be keeping a close eye on your progress. All it takes is a couple of complaints, and you'll be hearing from the board." With that, she turned on her heel and left. I felt a surge of anger, knowing I had to do something drastic to stand up for my art. That evening, I sat down with a notepad, brainstorming the next piece I could create, a statement piece that would encapsulate my frustration and creativity. Days turned into more weeks, and the tension heightened. Karen began to muster her forces, recruiting fellow HOA patrols to keep watch over my yard. During a neighborhood walk, I overheard two older women gossiping near the corner. "Did you see that colorful mess Lily has in her yard?" one of them said, shaking her head disapprovingly. "It's like a circus exploded." "I know. And her gnome looks like it's had a hard life," the other replied, laughter escaping her lips. Each time I heard comments like these, my heart sank further. It was a stark reminder of how someone else's perspective could twist the beauty of my passion into something embarrassing. The more whispers I heard, the more determined I became to push back. Then came the day I decided to unveil my grand creation, an enormous sculpture depicting a sunburst with outstretched rays made from reflective metal and iridescent glass. I called it Radiance. It was bold, bright, and daringly colorful. I wanted it to encapsulate everything I felt in my heart: joy, defiance, and individuality. On the day of the unveiling, I hosted a small gathering, inviting supportive neighbors and friends. I was nervous, but excited. As I pulled off the tarp, the radiant sculpture glimmered under the sunlight, casting reflections that danced across my yard. "Wow, Lily, this is incredible," Emma exclaimed, eyes wide with admiration. "It's like the sun itself is smiling down on us." "Thank you. I wanted to create something uplifting, something that breaks through the gray of our typical neighborhood decor," I replied, reveling in the moment. But as the cheers echoed, I caught sight of Karen in the distance. Her face was a mask of fury, arms crossed tightly like an impenetrable wall. I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Don't let her get you down, Lily," another neighbor whispered. "This is your art, and it deserves to be celebrated." But Karen was not about to let this pass. "This cannot continue," she suddenly shouted, striding up to the gathering. "You all think this is acceptable? Lily, do you realize you're ruining the community's aesthetics with this monstrosity?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Monstrosity?" I echoed, my voice trembling with indignation. "This is art. It inspires joy. If you want to ruin that, it's you, not my piece, that's out of line. Art should enhance, not distract." Karen shot back, her tone clipped. "I'll be filing complaints with the HOA, and we'll see how much longer you can flaunt this nonsense." I felt my heart race. The atmosphere was tense, and I could see nervous glances exchanged among my neighbors. This was escalating. And fast. "Why don't you talk to us instead of hiding behind your pet rules, Karen?" I replied, my voice rising with courage. "This is about community spirit. Have you ever thought about what brings us all together?" "Community spirit? This is not a playground for your artistic whims," she countered. I could see her face redden as she felt cornered. The crowd began to murmur, energized. "We support Lily," someone shouted, and soon others joined in, chanting their support. The situation felt electric, a mixture of fear and adrenaline coursing through me. I turned to the crowd, feeling bolstered by their enthusiasm. Art represents who we are, and I won't let someone stifle that because they can't appreciate a splash of color. We're a community, not a dictatorship. Karen's expression shifted from anger to disbelief, watching the tide turning against her. The air buzzed with nervous energy, and just like that, everything changed. As the gathering dispersed, I could feel my hope rekindling. Sure, the war wasn't over, it was just beginning, but I leaned into that uncertainty, ready to fight for my right to express who I was. Karen might have thought she could extinguish my light, but I was ready to shine brighter than ever. Little did I know, the real battle was yet to unfold. The anticipation for the HOA meeting hung heavy in the air. Each day seemed to stretch longer than the last as I prepared for what I knew would be a showdown. My heart raced every time I thought about facing Karen again, but this time I was armed with the support of my neighbors and a newfound determination. The sun dipped low in the sky on the day of the meeting, casting a warm glow over Maplewood Estates, and I joined my fellow residents, resolute and hopeful. As I approached the community center where the meeting would be held, I felt a wave of familiar anxiety. Neighbors mingled in clusters, exchanging nervous glances and whispers. I recognized many faces, some supportive and others apprehensive. It struck me that this was about more than just my art. It was about standing up for creativity, individuality, and our rights as residents. When the meeting started, I took a deep breath, glancing over at Karen, who sat primly at the front, armed with her clipboard like a knight with a lance. She looked ready to battle, her expression hard and judgmental. "Good evening, everyone," Karen announced, her voice authoritative and piercing through the murmurs like a sword. "We're here today to discuss the ongoing violations and to address the troubling activities of one of our residents, Lily Parker, and her increasingly outrageous yard decor." A low ripple of tension washed over the crowd. It was clear that many had come to support me, but the cold pragmatism of Karen's words hung like a storm cloud. "I would like to remind you all of our community's bylaws, which expressly state that all decorations must uphold the neighborhood aesthetic," Karen continued, flipping through pages on her clipboard. "While I admire creativity, it cannot come at the expense of order." I felt something snap inside. No longer was I going to cower in fear, not after everything I'd fought for. "Excuse me, Karen," I interrupted, my voice unwavering. "What is this supposed aesthetic anyway? A beige landscape devoid of personality? That's not the warmth of community, it's the death of it." A few residents murmured agreement, and the flicker of defiance sparked within me like a match lit in a dark room. I stood, my heart pounding, and continued. "Art brings joy. My sculptures were created not merely to decorate, but to inspire and spark happiness within this community. They reflect the spirit of Maplewood." Karen glared at me, but I could see her determination beginning to wane. "Lily," she countered, "this isn't personal. I'm doing this to maintain property values. Your art distracts from the beauty of our homes." "Distracts?" I raised an eyebrow, feeling energized by the crowd's growing enormity. Or perhaps its brightness draws attention and creates an opportunity for connection? Look around. The support I've received shows the power of expression and creativity. Aren't we a community that celebrates individuality? The atmosphere shifted, palpable energy swirling through the room as murmurs of agreement spread. More voices chimed in, emboldened by my words. "Lily's right," shouted Emma, the same young neighbor who had admired my dragonfly. "Her art makes our streets feel alive. We don't want a neighborhood that feels like a museum. We want a home." Encouraged by her passionate outburst, others joined in, voices growing louder. "More art, more creativity," they shouted, rallying together into a chorus of support. Karen's composure began to crack. "You don't understand," she stated, desperation creeping into her voice. "If we allow chaos in our yards, what's next? This neighborhood will become unrecognizable." "Unrecognizable?" A voice from the back piped up, and I turned to see Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman who had lived here for decades. "It's unrecognizable already with your iron grip on creativity. We don't want to live in fear of expressing ourselves." The tide had turned. Feeling the energy of the crowd, I knew we had a chance. "Karen, we cannot allow one person's interpretation of order to dictate our happiness. We want a place that celebrates who we are. Let's embrace our diversity and color." our art. At that moment, Karen leaned back in her chair, arms crossed and lips pursed. Her eyes flicked from person to person in the crowd as if searching for allies, but I could see the worry creeping in. Her power was slipping and she sensed it. "Let's take a vote," I suggested, garnering murmurs of approval. "The question is simple. Do we believe in creativity and the freedom to express ourselves in our own yards, or do we continue to grant control to someone who sees art as a nuisance?" The crowd cheered in agreement. It was electrifying. Everyone seemed ready to stand up for what they believed in, and I felt my heart swell with pride. Karen's discomfort was palpable, and it only grew as the board members initiated the vote. As the members counted hands raised in support of creativity, Karen's expression morphed from confident to horrified. I felt the collective hope of everyone around me. The results rolled in, and as the majority voted in favor of embracing artistic expression, a surge of delight washed over the room. "Motion passed," one of the board members finally announced, and with that, the tension erupted into jubilant cheers. "Thank you, everyone," I exclaimed, my voice catching, overwhelmed with gratitude. "This is a victory for our community, for our voices, and for the spirit of art." Turning back to Karen, I offered her one last voice. "I sincerely hope you'll join us next time we gather to create something beautiful together. It may not fit your previous ideals, but let's work toward a community that embraces everything we can be." A moment of silence filled the room as Karen's eyes flashed with emotion, anger, disbelief, regret. But it was fleeting. With a curt nod, she stormed out of the community center, the sound of her heels echoing as she left. The weight of our victory settled in, filling the air with joy and relief. I turned to my friends and neighbors, realizing how rare and meaningful moments like this could be. "Let's celebrate," someone shouted, yelling over the excitement. "Art Day. We should all create something and decorate our yards together." The energy surged, laughter filling the space as we began to discuss ideas for upcoming events. I felt a sense of liberation. This was only the beginning, not just for my art, but for our community's spirit. As I walked out of the community center, the cool evening air brushing against my face, I realized that we weren't just reclaiming a neighborhood. We were nurturing a sanctuary where creativity flourished unapologetically. With my heart alight and my spirit soaring, I reveled in the joy of the moment, knowing that art truly had the power to unite us all. The days following the HOA meeting felt surreal. I could barely believe how quickly everything had shifted in our community. Maplewood Estates was no longer just a cluster of uniform houses. It had become a vibrant tapestry of creativity and color. The air buzzed with excitement as neighbors celebrated our collective victory, and a newfound spirit of collaboration blossomed in a place that had once been stifled by conformity. As the sun rose on a crisp Saturday morning, I decided to host an Art in the Park event, an open invitation for the neighborhood to come together and create. I envisioned a day filled with laughter, paint splatters, and shared stories, where each family could showcase their artistic talents. The idea thrilled me, and I started preparing the yard, eager to turn the bare patches of grass into an open-air gallery. The day arrived, and I awoke to a beautiful blue sky peppered with fluffy white clouds. I set up tables in my backyard and laid out paints, brushes, and a variety of materials ready for anyone to use. Vibrant banners, each adorned with colorful patterns, flapped in the gentle breeze, creating the perfect backdrop for the events to unfold. As neighbors began filtering in, the air filled with chatter and laughter. Emma, the little girl who had first complimented my dragonfly sculpture, was practically bouncing with excitement. "Lily, look at all the colors. Can I paint a huge flower?" "Of course," I replied, grinning widely. "The bigger the better. Let your imagination run wild." People began to gather around our makeshift art station, picking up brushes and laughing as they painted bright masterpieces. I noticed Mrs. Henderson, who had stood against Karen at the meeting, painting a colorful sun alongside a group of kids who would dip their hands into paint and stamp their little prints onto a massive canvas. "Seeing this just makes my heart sing, Lily," Mrs. Henderson exclaimed, her smile radiant. "You've breathed new life into our neighborhood. I can't remember the last time we all gathered like this." As the laughter surged, we started sharing stories about our artistic journeys, revealing hidden talents among ourselves. There was Frank from 3 doors down, who, despite his gruff exterior, turned out to be a skilled woodworker. He brought some of his small wooden sculptures to showcase how he merged practicality with artistry. "I've spent years tinkering away in my garage," Frank admitted sheepishly, "but I never thought I'd find the courage to share my work. Thank you for encouraging this, Lily." "Honestly, Frank, your pieces are amazing. We need more of your creations out here," I said, my enthusiasm prompting others to rally around him, praising his unique work. Hours passed like minutes, the day becoming a whirlwind of inspiration and joy. As children painted vibrant butterflies and parents joined in on the fun, I couldn't help but marvel at how art had stitched us together like a living quilt. Around midday, we gathered around a large canvas that sat at the heart of the gathering. I took a moment to address everyone, my heart swelling with happiness. "Thank you all for coming today. This isn't just a celebration of art, it's a celebration of who we are as a community. This is what I imagined when I created my sculptures. I wanted to create joy, not just for myself, but for all of you as well. Without your support, I wouldn't have found the courage to stand up against Karen." A round of applause erupted, and I could see smiles blossoming on faces that had once looked worried and restrained. "Let's create something together. We can leave our imprint on this canvas that stands as a testament to our creative spirit," I said, waving my hands toward the blank canvas, ready for everyone to contribute. With paint pots and brushes handed out, everyone stepped forward, adding their unique marks. Swirls of color, handprints of children, and splatters of creative chaos. The canvas came alive, pulsating with life as more and more contributions turned it into an explosion of colors and individual stories woven together. In the midst of the artistic frenzy, I caught a glimpse of Karen watching from a distance. She seemed like a ghost of her former self, standing alone at the edge of the gathering, arms crossed tightly as if she were warding off unwanted emotions. My heart ached for a moment. I understood that she was battling her own fears and insecurities, just like I once had. I set down my brush and walked over to her, the sun warming my face. "Karen," I called gently as I approached, "why don't you join us?" A flicker of surprise crossed her face. I don't know if that's a good idea." "Why not? We're all here to create and enjoy ourselves," I urged, hoping to find a bridge between us. She frowned, glancing back at the gathering. "You all just want chaos. Art is supposed to be controlled. It needs boundaries." "Boundaries can be good, but so can freedom. Look around. Art is bringing us together. This is what our community is meant to be, filled with joy, creativity, and connection," I replied earnestly. "Let's create a space that inspires everyone, including you." After a long moment, Karen sighed deeply, and I watched as the rigid line of her shoulders slowly relaxed. "Perhaps I've been too strict," she admitted softly. "I just wanted what I thought was best for our neighborhood." "Maybe we can find a middle ground," I suggested. "How about you paint a small section on the canvas with us? Show us your perspective." Karen looked at the chaotic scene before us, a tense mix of excitement and reservation. Finally, she stepped forward, brushing her fingers through the air. "I suppose a little color wouldn't hurt. Just don't expect it to be anything brilliant." I smiled at her reluctance, but remained hopeful. "Just be yourself. That's what art is about." As she took a brush and dipped it into bright blue paint, the crowd erupted in cheers. A sense of magic began to unfold as she started to paint a calm blue sky swirling with white clouds on the canvas. I watched as her features softened, the tension melting away. It was like we were breaking down a wall between us, not just about art, but about understanding. When the canvas was finally complete, we all stepped back, surveying our collective work. It stood as a vibrant reminder of our community's spirit, a beautiful representation of diversity, joy, and connection that would grace our neighborhood for years to come. "This is wonderful," Karen admitted, a soft smile illuminating her face for the first time. "I never thought I would feel this way about art." "Thank you for participating," I said earnestly. "Your contributions matter, Karen. They always have." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, a sense of magic settled over the neighborhood. The laughter and conversation flowed freely like the paint on the canvas, and I took a moment to enjoy the warmth of belonging. As families began to gather around a small campfire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was what I had envisioned all those months ago, an artistic haven where creativity and community flourished hand in hand. In the weeks that followed, art in the park became a beloved tradition for Maplewood Estates. Residents eagerly participated, bringing their own ideas to life, and Karen, now part of our community, supported us every step of the way. Together, we embraced new and exciting art projects, evolving the neighborhood into a vibrant masterpiece. And one late afternoon, as I strolled past my sculptures, my heart swelled with gratitude. It was a new era for Maplewood, one where art and community could exist harmoniously, allowing us all to celebrate our differences and our collective spirit. As my voice rang out like a bell at the gathering, I thought back to the challenges I had faced. The worry, the fear of losing my identity in art. It now felt like a distant memory, replaced by an overwhelming sense of triumph and hope. Here's to art and all of us. I raised my glass, and the crowd echoed back with joyful cheers. May we continue to inspire each other and fill our lives with color. In that moment, I realized how powerful the threads of unity and creativity could weave us together. We weren't just a neighborhood anymore. We were a vibrant community of artists, dreamers, and individuals, celebrating life in all its glorious colors.